Welcome back to Dimebag Darren World Headquarters here in Chapter 9 of my favorite book, and hopefully yours too, Isaac Asimov's Foundation. We are in the final chapter of Book 3. That's awesome. We're going to have some fun with this. Let's go. Chapter 9. The time vault was filled far beyond the available seating capacity, and the men lined the back of the room 3 deep. Salver Hardin compared this large company with the few men attending the first appearance of Harry Seldon 30 years earlier. There'd only been 6 then, the 5 old encyclopedists, all dead now, and himself, the young figurehead of a mayor. It had been on that day that he, with Johann Lee's assistance, had removed the figurehead stigma from his office. It was quite different now, different in every respect. Every man of the city council was awaiting Seldon's appearance. He himself was still mayor, but all powerful now since the utter rout of Anacreon, all popular. It was quite different now, different in every respect. Every man of the city council was awaiting Seldon's appearance. He himself was still mayor, but all powerful now, and since the utter rout of Anacreon, all popular. When he had returned from Anacreon with the news of the death of Venus and the newly signed treaty with the trembling Leopold, he was greeted with a vote of confidence of shrieking unanimity. He was greeted with a vote of confidence of shrieking unanimity. When this was followed in rapid order by similar treaties signed with each of the other 3 kingdoms, treaties that gave the Foundation powers such as would prevent any attempts at similar attack like Anacreon's. Oh, shit. When this was followed in rapid order by similar treaties signed with each of the other 3 kingdoms, treaties that give the Foundation powers such as would forever prevent any attempts at attacks similar to that of Anacreon's, torchlight processions had been held in every city of Terminus. Not even Harry Seldon's name had been more loudly cheered. Hardin's lip twitched. Such popularity had been his after the first crisis also. Across the room, Seth Cermak and Louis Bort were engaged in animated discussion, and recent events seemed to have put them out not at all. They had joined in the vote of confidence, made speeches in which they publicly admitted they had been in the wrong, apologized handsomely for declaring they had merely followed the dictates of their judgment and their conscience, and immediately launched a new actionist campaign. Johann Lee touched Hardin's sleeve and pointed significantly to his watch. Hardin looked up. "Hello there, Lee. Are you still sour? What's wrong now?" "He's due in 5 minutes, isn't he?" "I presume so. He appeared at noon last time." "What if he doesn't?" "Are you going to wear me down with all your worries all your life? If he doesn't, he won't." Lee frowned and shook his head slowly. "If this thing flops, we're in another mess. Without Seldon's backing for what we've done, Cermak will be free to start all over. He wants outright annexation of the 4 kingdoms and immediate expansion of the Foundation, by force if necessary. He's begun his campaign already." "I know. A fire eater must eat fire even if he has to kindle it himself. And you, Lee, you've got to worry even if it must. And you, Lee, have got to worry even if you must kill yourself to invent something to worry about." Lee would have answered him, but he lost his breath at just that moment as the lights yellowed and went dim. He raised his arm to point to the glass cubicle that dominated half the room and collapsed into a chair with a windy sigh. Hardin himself straightened at the sight of the figure that now filled the cubicle, a figure in a wheelchair. He alone, of all those present, could remember the day decades ago when that figure had appeared first. He had been young then, and the figure old. Since then, the figure had not aged a day, but he himself had grown old. The figure, sta- the figure stared straight ahead, hands fingering a book in his lap. It said, "I am Harry Seldon." The voice was old and soft. There was a breathless silence in the room, and Harry Seldon continued conversationally. "This is the second time I've been here. Of course, I don't know if any of you were here for the first time. In fact, I have no way of telling by sense perception if there is anyone here at all. But that doesn't matter. If the second crisis has been overcome safely, you are bound to be here. There is no way out. If you are not here, then the second crisis has been too much for you." He smiled engagingly. "I doubt that, however, for my figures show a 98.4% probability there is to be no significant deviation from the plan in the first 80 years. According to our calculations, you have now reached domination of the barbarian kingdoms immediately surrounding the Foundation. Just as in the first crisis, you held them off by use of the balance of power. So in the second, you gain mastery by use of the spiritual power, as against the temporal. However, I might warn you here against overconfidence. It is not my way to grant you any foreknowledge in these recordings, but it would be safe to indicate that what you have now achieved is merely a new balance, though one in which your position is considerably better. The spiritual power, while sufficient to ward off attacks of the temporal, is not sufficient to attack in return. Because of the invariable growth of the counteracting force known as regionalism or nationalism, the spiritual power cannot prevail. I am telling you nothing new, I'm sure. You must pardon me, by the way, for speaking to you in this vague way. The terms I use are at best mere approximations, but none of you is qualified to understand the true symbology of psychohistory, so I must do the best that I can. In this case, the Foundation is only the start of a path that leads to a new empire. The neighboring kingdoms, in manpower and resources, are still overwhelmingly powerful as compared to yourselves. Outside them lies the vast tangled jungle of barbarism that extends around the entire breadth of the galaxy. Within that rim, there is still what is left of the galactic empire, and that, weakened and decaying though it is still incomparably mighty. At this point, Harry Seldon lifted his book and opened it. His face grew solemn. "And never forget, there was another foundation established 80 years ago, a foundation at the other end of the galaxy, at Star's End. They will always be there for consideration. Gentlemen, 920 years of the plan stretch ahead of you. The problem is yours. Go to it." He dropped his eyes to his book and flicked out of existence, while the lights brightened to fullness, while the lights brightened to fullness. In the babble that followed, lean, Lee leaned over to Hardin's ear. He didn't say when he'd be back. He dropped his eyes to the book and flicked out of existence while the lights brightened to fullness. In the babble that followed, Lee leaned over to Hardin's ear. He didn't say when he'd be back. Hardin replied, I know, but I trust that he won't return until you and I are safely and cozily dead. And that brings Chapter 9 to a close and Book 3 to a close. I hope you enjoyed it up till now. We'll be getting into Book 4 shortly. Thank you for your time. Come back soon. Bye for now.